Ariel Helwani in Baltimore, Maryland, just days away now from UFC 172 alongside MMA's super agent. Are you an agent or a manager?
It's the same thing.
Well, actually, it's not. A manager manages and an agent cuts the deals.
Well, then I'm a agent/manager.
All right. He is Malki Kawa, and he's been begging me for the last 45 or so minutes to do this interview right now.
Sure. Yeah, begging so much.
You're here for Jon Jones, of course, but you had a couple other clients, and I say had because one has dropped off. Let's talk about that first. Vagner Hoja, just a couple of days ago, wasn't in the UFC.
Correct.
Then he gets signed to fight on short notice against Joe Ellenberger, and then he got injured? What happened?
Yeah. He was in the training room warming up, trying to cut weight and stuff. You know how the guys go in, they'll hit mitts, they'll roll around jiu-jitsu-wise. And apparently he was rolling with his training partner, and they went to do some move, and he was rolling to take the guys back. It landed on him, and I think it fractured his rib.
Wow. Is he in a lot of pain right now?
He's in a lot of pain. He went to the hospital. The UFC took him to the hospital yesterday, got everything checked out, and it's a fractured rib. So,
And will he get another shot in the UFC?
yeah, I would assume so. I talked to Joe yesterday, and Joe was like, "Hey, look, it's just bad luck. It happens." But the kid did step up with no notice whatsoever. I mean, I think we got him in the UFC Saturday on the show in Orlando. Joe told me he was looking for someone to fix. Because Jim Miller's guy fell out, and so we got Vagner in literally on that Saturday. So he had Sunday and Monday to get his medicals done and fly here Tuesday. So he stepped up, and it just goes to show who he is. And I think Joe will give him another chance.
What's his morale like to get back in the UFC finally? He hadn't been here in a couple of years.
Dude, I don't think he slept last night. He was crying, when it happened. Pretty much, I mean, he was really, afraid that they weren't going to give him another chance or something like that. And I just dude, they're not like that. They're good people. At the end of the day, they know what you tried to do, so it's okay. It'll be all right. I mean, it's a downer for all of us because I know what it was like for him every day calling me for the last year. I want to get back in. There's somebody hurt. Get me back in. Blah blah blah. And finally he gets his chance to come back, and it gets derailed this way.
So look at you. You're wearing a suit jacket. You're looking very nice, and of course that means Jon Jones is fighting because you always take it up a notch for Jon Jones. He's right over there speaking to the media, and it's been an interesting time for Jon Jones. Never a dull moment.
Right.
And just a couple weeks ago, a little controversy with his Instagram. Right. Can you explain to us what happened there?
So Jon had, I guess, lost his phone,
Right.
which is the reason why I couldn't get a hold of him the entire time the stuff was going on. And apparently, Jon, there's about 11 of us that have Jon's social media passwords. If he's on a plane and, there's a sponsored tweet that needs to go out, we try to help him out and get stuff done. So apparently he gave his password to someone that was helping him with social media and things of that nature and was kind of working with Jon on some stuff and just decided to retaliate to some fan that was, saying stuff to him and basically took it way overboard. And when we were at this media luncheon this past week, Jon made it very clear. He's like, look, I've been called a nigger on social media. I've been told that my family should die. I've been told that my kids should be molested. I mean, the fans have told him things like this, and he's never responded to stuff like that. So somebody responding, "Oh, you lost the Gustafson," to some kid on Instagram is not, what Jon Jones would do. And that's the crazy thing about this whole thing, that fans actually believed for a minute that Jon Jones, would do something like this.
Every time he says something, does something, it's scrutinized, and sometimes he'll send out a tweet, and then he'll delete it, and then he'll put something out, and then people will they'll dissect it for 24 hours. Why do you think he is so polarizing? There are some people who just naturally seem to be fan favorites, others not, and he's kind of in the middle there, where people just love to hate him or really love him. Why do you think that is?
Because he's the best. Because he's the greatest that this sport has ever seen. He's better than Chuck Liddell, by far. He's greater than Tito Ortiz, by far. And I think just, with some more time, then people will realize that when I've been saying he was the number one pound-for-pound fighter when Anderson was, that, I believe would have beat Anderson 10 out of 10 times in fights. I'm not disrespecting any of those guys. I'm just saying that I really honestly believe that Jon Jones is the number one fighter and the greatest fighter that this sport has ever seen. Go back from UFC 1 to UFC 5000. Hopefully there'll be another one that comes like him and we'll get to see greatness again. But Jon's the greatest that our generation is being able to witness right now. And in the history of our sport, I believe he's the greatest fighter. So people are either going to really, really love him or they're going to really, really hate him. And it's just that's really what I think. It's the Muhammad Ali effect. I think the same way Muhammad Ali was really hated at one point and then really loved, I think at some point the tide will turn on Jon.
Does the UFC promote him enough, though? Is he one of their guys? Do you feel like he gets the love from them?
It really depends. See, the thing is with that whole thing is there's a lot of factors that go into it. Do they promote him? I think they try to. Is Jon always available to do everything they want? I don't think so. So what happens is sometimes rifts get created because, they need him to do something, then he can't do it, then the hell with it, you know what I mean? And so it's one of those things where Jon has requested and he's demanded to be on stuff that's bigger and better than the average stuff. You know what I mean? And I think Jon deserves that. And I think that, the UFC does a great job of promoting when they can. And I just think that, there's a lot of barriers that still need to be broken down. So it's not as simple as saying, well, we get every other fighter on the Tonight Show with David Letterman or something like that, and then Jon's just not getting it. I just think that there's a lot of things that Jon wants to get done that's still not available to UFC fighters. But he's breaking the walls down little by little and getting it, whether it's they help him do it or he does it himself, we're out there trying to do it. So what I'd like to see more of a push, I think where the problem comes in is I just think when you hear Dana talk about him sometimes, you hear certain things like, Ronda Rousey's my Chuck Liddell and Ronda Rousey's this and Ronda Rousey's that. And I don't necessarily disagree with some of those comments, but I think it's kind of absurd to think that she's a bigger star than Jon Jones. It doesn't show it anywhere.
You don't agree as far as the barriers she's broken, as far as the attention?
I think that she's done a big deal for women's MMA, and I think she's done a big thing just for, the whole, the fact that she's made Dana do a 360 to me is a really big deal. But for her to all of a sudden be considered bigger than Jon Jones, I don't think that's necessarily reality. You get where I'm coming from?
Why hasn't he become a big enough or a bigger pay-per-view draw? Because, he hasn't gotten that 1,800,000, 900. Why not?
Well, I think, there's a couple factors in that. I think the fact that most people he's almost in every one of his fights. He's been, I think, up until the I think the Shogun fight even. The Shogun fight. He was a 3-1 favorite in that fight, or a 4-1 favorite in that fight as an underdog. I think that most people figure that Jon Jones is just going to win their fights. They'll just watch the highlight of it and call it a day. There really hasn't been that one opponent that took him to deep waters other than the Gustafsson fight. I believe the Gustafsson.
No one expected that going into it.
Right. So I think that when you look at just Jon Jones's fights and his and how they've gone, I honestly believe that there hasn't been that that rivalry that really has been able to push it to
foil a Frazier to his Ali.
Really, yeah, you know what I mean. I think even when they get their press conferences, when they get the post-fight stuff and stuff that they just do in the media, I don't really believe that anyone's really sat there and been able to make him engage to a level of like a Floyd Mayweather or like how Mike Tyson would have done back in the days. The day that Jon does that, I think though he'll start to hit it. I think when he takes the promotional standpoint as far as what fans like to see, because I don't think he doesn't promote the fight well. I mean, if you walk with him fight week, every person he meets says, hey, make sure you watch the pay-per-view. I mean, like grassroots type stuff, just shaking hands and saying, hey, make sure you watch me fight Saturday. But we, as human beings, just as people, if we see two guys sitting there talking trash to each other, we sit there and we start tuning in. And he's just not a trash talker. So, you know what I mean? There's that factor. I think there's all this, there's other factors as far as, the promotion of fights and stuff like that. I mean, there's a bunch of things that could probably be done different on all,
But speaking of Floyd, he has become a monstrous pay-per-view draw, right? But it's really when he started to become a bad guy. Like the women and the money and the cars and the mansion. If Jon embraced that, do you think he would be? Because if he did, so do you think he should?
No, I mean, you got to understand, he has a fiance, he's got a couple daughters, and that's just not the way he wants to portray himself, and I don't blame him for that. So I understand where he's coming from. Floyd can do that because Floyd, has literally embodied that, become that lifestyle. And people got to realize too that Floyd became a pay-per-view draw when he beat De La Hoya. Before that, he never broke 300,000 buys. And you can go look up the stats on that. Sure. So up until De La Hoya, he wasn't a buy either. He's 17 years in the game. Jon's 5 years in the game. We still have a lot of, and remember, boxing's been accepted for 50, 60 years, 70 years. MMA's just now starting to break into stuff. It's just now starting to get accepted. So it's not like you can sit here and be like, well, he's not doing a million people. Okay, I understand. Well, when people say, well, Brock did it because he came from an industry where he's
already established
doing a million people. So how do you sit here and try to... America itself is not like Brazil behind him like that. It's not like Canada that was behind George St. Pierre. So, we still got to get America on board with, these fighters and getting this stuff to, a million pay-per-view buys. So I just think that, it's just going to take some time. I mean, look, I'll put it to you like this. People started coming at me at one time, Jon needs to start making money and this and that and, the fight stuff. And I went back and added up all of Floyd's purses up until this point. Jon's made more money than Floyd in this fight game so far. Now, will he ever make $30 million? I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm hoping that in the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, he's doing 1.5 million, 2 million pay-per-view buys to where we can walk in and say, hey, guys, the numbers dictate him making 32 million, a fight. But as of right now, it's I think it's a process. With every victory, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And hopefully the challenges keep coming. I think there's a lot of cool challenges coming up. You still have, the Cormier fight one day. You got now apparently a Phil Davis fight one day. You know what I mean?
Gustafsson
rematch one day. You have so many different opportunities for him to sit there and start building more and more and more. And hopefully fans will either hate him more and buy in, or they'll love him more and buy in. So it's just a matter of time, I feel.
One last quick thing. Will he be able to wear the Nike swoosh in the cage on Saturday?
No.
Why?
I guess Nike and the UFC couldn't come to any agreement. as of right now.
Unfortunate.
Very, I think.
Who's his main sponsor?
EA Sports. I mean, the only sponsor that's going into the octagon with him is EA Sports.
Just EA, nothing else.
Right, just EA Sports. Because, I mean, Nike...
Is he still a Nike guy, though?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a Nike guy. He's still in the contract for another 18 months, and he'll still, be a Nike guy outside. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, but he's on the Brazil World Cup commercial and stuff like that. So he's on that with Anderson Silva, actually. It's a really cool piece.
Well, Nike still want to do business with him if they can't be in the cage.
From what I've been told, yes. From what I've been told, that even if they go and do a deal with Under Armour and all that type of stuff, listen, I've been saying this for a long time, and if you go back to any of my interviews when he first got the Nike deal, I told everyone, I said, I think maybe to you, be careful what you guys are wishing for, because eventually somebody's going to come into the cage and take over. And if you look at traditionally what Nikes, Under Armours, and Reebok have done in football or in basketball, there's only 1% of the entire league that really makes money. Everyone else gets just, product deals and small 20 grand here, 10 grand there, if even, right? So when he got that Nike deal, I knew it was just a matter of time before the UFC, before these brands decided to say, hey, you know what, this is a real business. Nike is the leader in that as far as the shoe market and product for sports. So when they did the deal with him, I knew for a fact it was going to make Under Armour, Reebok, Adidas, everyone look at it and say, what's going on, and watch what happens. So as soon as he got the deal, Reebok goes and does these deals with these fighters in the Tough Mudder thing. Under Armour had a deal with George, but now they're talking about doing a deal with the UFC on a bigger level, right? And Adidas did what? They did a product deal with the RFA, and I think we even got to see them in the octagon once on one of the Tough Brazil guys. So, I mean, I do believe, I don't think Jon gets enough credit for the stuff he gets done and for the stuff that, he does for the sport. But, I mean, if we go to a uniform deal, I believe it happened because of the fact that it's such a big thing with Jon Jones making the Nike thing. And it's something that, the fighters themselves should be grateful and embrace, because that's going to give them an opportunity to become those type of athletes. And now what will happen? If Under Armour gets it, or Reebok or whomever, Nike's still going to be in the market to start fishing. Now they have to. So this uniform thing might be a little controversial at first, and it might be a little tough, but before you know it, Nike now is going to say, wait a minute, if Under Armour took over the UFC and we have Jon Jones and Anderson's hurt, maybe Anderson comes back, doesn't come back, whatever it is, well, maybe it's time for us to start looking at who else we should go and sign. And then they'll start going and signing guys and putting them in commercials, and then now you got Under Armour putting people in commercials, and guess what? The sport starts coming up. So I look at it as a good thing, but it's going to be a while before people embrace it that way, because when you start going from making $10,000, $15,000 a fight to $10,000 a year, maybe, you're going to start to lose some money, and people are going to be pretty upset, and it's just the way it goes.
I just wish you were a little more verbose, that you would speak up and express yourself a little more when doing interviews.
Yeah, me too. I'm sorry. I'm just a little laid back sometimes. My bad. Sorry.
Good to see you. Best of luck to the team. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, too. I'm on Ariel's show. So glad. Oh, my God. I did it. Hi, Mom.